Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The rhythmic patter of raindrops against the window pane set an ominous backdrop for the scene unfolding within the dimly lit apartment. A resigned sigh echoed through the room, its owner accepting their fate. "You sealed your own destiny, my dear," Elizabeth chimed, her voice laced with playful malice. Her brother, Marcus, stood tall but tense, his arms folded across his chest in a feeble attempt at defiance. "Your agreement is binding." Marcus couldn't help but feel a twinge of anxiety as he glanced at the pile of elaborately decorated packages, each one a step towards his impending transformation. "I understand," he conceded, reluctantly. "I just didn't think you'd actually go through with it." "You thought wrong," Melissa replied, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Besides, what did you expect when you bet that the Falcons wouldn't make it to the playoffs? Everyone knew they were having their best season in years." "They choked in the final quarter. They always choke," Calvin muttered, his eyes fixed on a pink floral sundress peeking out from one of the bags. "Jesus, Mel, you're not seriously going to make me wear that, are you?" "That and so much more," Melissa confirmed, pulling out the dress and holding it against her brother's tall frame.
"I think this will look lovely with your complexion. We'll have to do something about that stubble, though."
The following morning arrived too quickly. Calvin had barely slept, his mind racing with anxiety about what the next month would entail. When Melissa arrived at his door at 7 a.m. sharp, armed with cosmetics, razors, and an enthusiasm that bordered on sadistic, Calvin seriously considered changing his address and phone number. "First things first," Melissa announced, pushing past him into the apartment. "We need to get you cleaned up. Go shower and make sure you use this." She thrust a pink razor and floral-scented shaving cream into his hands. "Every inch of exposed skin, Cal. We made a deal." 2 hours later, Calvin stared at his reflection in disbelief. His face was smooth, eyebrows neatly shaped, and a careful application of makeup had softened his features. Auburn hair extensions, meticulously attached by Melissa's expert hands, cascaded over his shoulders in gentle waves. "I don't—" Calvin started, his voice catching as he touched the unfamiliar locks.
"I don't even recognize myself."
Melissa stood behind him, admiring her handiwork. "That's the point. For the next month, Calvin doesn't exist. Meet Juliet."
"Juliet?"
Calvin questioned, turning to look at his sister. "You've already picked out a name?" "I've been planning this since the day you made that ridiculous bet," Melissa admitted, with a laugh.
"Now, let's get you dressed. We have a lot to cover today if you're going to convince anyone you've been a woman your whole life."
The floral sundress felt foreign against Calvin's newly smooth skin. The strappy sandals pinched his toes, and the light cardigan Melissa insisted he wear to complete the look made him feel even more confined. But what truly unsettled him was how different he felt as he moved around his apartment, practicing the walk Melissa had demonstrated. "Smaller steps," she corrected, watching him with critical eyes. "You're not trying to cover distance. You're trying to look elegant. And for goodness sake, relax your shoulders." "This is impossible," Calvin groaned, collapsing onto the couch.
"No one's going to believe I'm a woman."
"Not with that attitude," Melissa agreed. "But you'd be surprised what people will believe when you present them with confidence. That's your main problem, Cal. You've never been confident in yourself." Calvin, or rather Juliet, spent that first day confined to the apartment, learning the basics of feminine comportment under Melissa's strict tutelage. By evening, his feet ached, His back hurt from maintaining proper posture, and his cheeks were sore from the fake smile Melissa insisted he practice. "Tomorrow," Melissa announced as she packed up her supplies. "We're going shopping. Juliet needs a proper wardrobe if she's going to last a month."
"Can't we just use what you brought?" Calvin pleaded, gesturing to the bags still scattered around the living room.
"Those are just starter pieces," Melissa explained, as if speaking to a child. "If you're serious about this bet—"
"I'm not the one who's serious about it." "Then you need to commit fully. That means a complete wardrobe, proper skincare routine, and at least 3 social outings where you present as Juliet."
"That wasn't part of the deal," Calvin protested.
"It's implied in the living as a woman clause," Melissa countered smoothly.
"Besides, how will I know you're keeping your end of the bargain if you just hide in here all month?"
The next day's shopping expedition was nothing short of torturous.
Calvin trailed behind his sister through department stores and boutiques, face burning with embarrassment, as Melissa loudly consulted with saleswomen about the best styles for my friend Juliet's figure. "She's still finding her personal style," Melissa explained to a sympathetic clerk at a mid-range women's clothing store. "We're thinking something professional but feminine. She works in graphic design."
"I do not,"
Calvin hissed when the clerk moved away to pull some options. "You do now?" Melissa whispered back. "I've thought everything through. Juliet Thomas is a freelance graphic designer who recently moved here from Portland. You work remotely, which explains why you don't have many local acquaintances, and you're my friend from college who's staying in the area for a few months."
"You've created an entire backstory?"
Calvin was simultaneously impressed and horrified by his sister's commitment to the charade. "Of course I have. Now, try on these blouses." By the end of the shopping day, Juliet, had acquired a wardrobe that included 7 dresses, 2 floral, 1 solid yellow, 2 black, 1 navy, and 1 in a subtle paisley print, 5 blouses, including a vibrant yellow one that Melissa insisted brought out the warmth in Juliet's complexion, 3 pairs of jeans specifically cut for women, 2 skirts, multiple sets of lingerie that Calvin refused to even look at while purchasing, and 4 pairs of shoes ranging from practical flats to modest heels.
"You're going to bankrupt me," Calvin complained as they loaded the bags into Melissa's car.
"Consider it an investment in your personal growth,"
Melissa replied serenely. "Besides, I covered half. I'm not completely heartless."
The first week as Juliet was a trial by fire. Calvin stumbled through the basics of makeup application, fought with the auburn hair extensions every morning, and cursed repeatedly as he struggled with clasps, zippers, and the general discomfort of women's undergarments.
"Why does everything have to be so complicated?"
he demanded on day 6, when a particularly troublesome zipper on a yellow blouse refused to cooperate. "Welcome to womanhood," Melissa replied without sympathy, reaching over to assist. "Just be grateful you don't have to deal with periods." Despite his complaints, Calvin found himself adapting more quickly than he'd expected. By the second week, he could apply a simple makeup look without Melissa's supervision, style the auburn extensions into a passable ponytail, and walk in the low heels without looking like he was navigating a tightrope. The first real test came when Melissa insisted it was time for one of the promised social outings. "Just coffee," she assured him, driving them to a cafe on the other side of town. "Somewhere no one knows you. It'll be good practice."
"Practice for what?"
Calvin asked, fidgeting with the hem of the yellow blouse Melissa had selected for the occasion. "The bet only lasts another 2 weeks. Practice for being comfortable in your own skin," Melissa replied, her tone unexpectedly serious. "I've never seen you so aware of yourself, Cal.
It's actually kind of refreshing. The coffee outing went surprisingly well. The barista called him Miss without a second glance. An elderly woman complimented his lovely auburn hair, and a businessman held the door for him on the way out. Each small interaction, each moment of being recognized and accepted as Juliet, left Calvin with a strange sense of accomplishment. "See? Not so terrible," Melissa said as they walked back to the car. "You even smiled at that guy who held the door. A real smile, not that forced grimace you've been practicing." Calvin felt his cheeks warm. "I was just being polite." "Mm-hmm," Melissa hummed knowingly. And the fact that he was cute had nothing to do with it? "Shut up," Calvin muttered, but there was no real heat behind it. As the third week began, something unexpected happened. Calvin started to look forward to his mornings as Juliet. There was something calming about the ritual of preparation, something artistic about the application of makeup, something satisfying about selecting an outfit that flattered his increasingly feminine silhouette. The day Melissa arrived to find Calvin already dressed in the yellow blouse and a pair of figure-flattering jeans, auburn hair swept into a neat side braid, she nearly dropped her coffee. "You're ready," she stated, clearly surprised.
I had a video meeting with a potential client,
Calvin explained, gesturing to his laptop.
Graphic design, remember? Your whole elaborate backstory?
"You're actually working as Juliet?" Melissa's eyebrows shot up. "That wasn't part of the bet." Calvin shrugged, a gesture that looked more elegant than it ever had before.
I figured if I have to do this for a month, I might as well make it productive. Besides, it's all remote work.
No one knows the difference. "Except you," Melissa pointed out, studying her brother with new interest. "You seem different, Cal. More relaxed." "It's weird," Calvin admitted, settling onto the couch with a grace that would have been foreign to him 3 weeks ago. "But there's something kind of freeing about being Juliet. People expect different things from her. They listen more. They don't automatically assume she knows what she's talking about when it comes to sports or politics or tech. It's like starting fresh." Melissa sat down beside him, expression thoughtful. "So you're enjoying it?"
I wouldn't go that far.
Calvin hedged, though the slight smile betrayed him. "Let's just say it's not as terrible as I expected." The final week of the bet arrived, and with it, a surprising proposition from Melissa. "I think we should extend the experiment," she suggested over dinner at Calvin's apartment. "What? Why?" Calvin looked up from his pasta, fork halfway to his mouth.
The bet was for 1 month. I've fulfilled my obligation.
"Have you, though?" Melissa tilted her head, studying the person across from her. The auburn hair was now styled in loose waves, the makeup subtle but skillfully applied, the posture naturally feminine. "Because it seems to me like you've done more than just fulfill an obligation. You've embraced it." Calvin set down his fork, considering his sister's words. It was true that he had grown comfortable as Juliet. More than comfortable. He had found a confidence in Juliet that Calvin had never possessed. As Juliet, he spoke up more in meetings, negotiated better rates for his freelance work, and even flirted casually with the delivery man who regularly brought packages to his door.
I don't know what you're talking about,
he said finally, but the denial lacked conviction. "I'm talking about the fact that you've been Juliet for almost all waking hours for the past month," Melissa pointed out. "Not just when I'm around or when you have meetings. I notice things, Cal, like how your neighbor called you Juliet when she waved to us yesterday, or how you have 3 new lipsticks on your bathroom counter that I didn't help you buy." Calvin felt heat rise to his cheeks.
The neighbor thing was just to maintain the cover story,
And the lipsticks were on sale. Uh-huh. Melissa nodded, clearly unconvinced. All I'm saying is, if you wanted to continue exploring this side of yourself, I would support that.
For how long?
Calvin asked, surprising himself with the question. For as long as it feels right, Melissa replied simply. The month officially ended on a Tuesday. Calvin woke up early, staring at his closet where men's clothes hung neglected on one side, women's clothes neatly organized on the other. Today, he could go back to being Calvin, back to baggy jeans and plain t-shirts, back to rolling out of bed and running a hand through short hair before heading out the door. Instead, he found himself reaching for the yellow blouse and a black skirt. The ritual of preparation had become a form of meditation. The gentle application of moisturizer, the careful blend of foundation, the precise line of eyeliner. Each step transforming not just his appearance, but his mindset. By the time he left for his meeting with a new client at a local cafe, Calvin had made a decision. Or perhaps Juliet had made it for him. 3 months after the bet ended, Juliet sat across from her sister at their favorite brunch spot, discussing Melissa's new boyfriend. He works in finance, which would normally be a red flag, Melissa explained, stirring her mimosa. But he's actually really down to earth, and he makes me laugh, which is more important than I realized. When do I get to meet this paragon of virtue? Juliet teased, adjusting the sleeve of her yellow blouse. It had become something of a signature piece, paired today with dark jeans and comfortable ankle boots. Actually, I was thinking of inviting you both to dinner next week, Melissa suggested. I've told him all about my amazing graphic designer friend, but nothing about my brother yet. I figured that conversation needed to happen in person. Juliet nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. In the months since embracing her identity, she had legally changed her name and begun the process of gender transition. But she hadn't yet navigated the introduction of a new significant other who knew only one version of Melissa's sibling. Do you think he'll be okay with it? Juliet asked, a hint of the old insecurity flickering across her face. Melissa reached across the table, squeezing her hand reassuringly. If he's not, then he's not the right guy for me. Simple as that. The dinner was arranged for the following Friday at Melissa's apartment. Juliet arrived early to help with preparations, her auburn hair now grown out to her shoulders and styled in soft waves. She wore a new navy dress that accentuated her increasingly feminine figure, paired with modest heels and simple gold jewelry. You look beautiful, Melissa commented as they prepared the appetizers. Much better than Calvin ever did in those awful cargo shorts. Juliet laughed, the sound light and genuine. Those shorts were comfortable, I'll have you know. They were an abomination, Melissa corrected, then froze at the sound of the doorbell. That's him. Ready? Juliet took a deep breath, nodding. As I'll ever be. The man who entered was tall, with kind eyes and a warm smile. You must be Juliet, he said, extending his hand. I'm Daniel. I've heard so much about your work. Melissa showed me the website you designed for her boutique. It's fantastic. Thank you, Juliet replied, relaxing slightly at his friendly demeanor. It's nice to finally meet you. Melissa's been surprisingly tight-lipped about you. Probably because she's waiting for you to give your approval, Daniel said with a wink. She mentioned you're like a sister to her. Melissa coughed, shooting Juliet a meaningful look. Actually, Dan, there's something I should explain about Juliet and me. As they settled around the dinner table,
Melissa carefully navigated the conversation toward the truth. The thing is, Juliet and I actually grew up together. We're not just friends from college like I initially told you. Daniel looked between them, confusion evident. I don't understand. Are you cousins? Siblings, actually, Melissa corrected gently. Juliet is my sister now, but when we were growing up, she was my brother Calvin. A moment of silence followed as Daniel processed this information. He looked at Juliet, who met his gaze steadily despite the anxiety churning in her stomach.
Oh,
he said finally.
I see. That's unexpected.
Is it a problem? Melissa asked, her tone making it clear that his answer would significantly impact their relationship. Daniel shook his head quickly. No, not at all. Just surprising. I thought you said your brother couldn't make it tonight. Juliet and Melissa exchanged glances before bursting into laughter. I guess that's technically true, Juliet admitted, relief washing over her. Calvin couldn't make it. He hasn't made an appearance in quite some time. And thank goodness for that, Melissa added. Juliet is much better company. Daniel smiled, genuinely intrigued. Well, I'd love to hear the story if you're comfortable sharing it. Over dinner, Juliet recounted the bet that had started it all, surprised at how distant it all seemed now. What had begun as an embarrassing forfeit had evolved into the most authentic version of herself she'd ever known. So, it was all because of a football game? Daniel asked, amazed. The Falcons and their notorious fourth-quarter collapse, Juliet confirmed with a rueful smile. Best bet I ever lost. I'm still taking credit for your glorious transformation, Melissa declared, raising her glass in a toast. To losing bets and finding yourself. To finding myself, Juliet echoed, clinking her glass against her sister's. The words felt right in a way she couldn't have imagined a year ago. As the evening progressed, Daniel's initial surprise gave way to genuine interest and acceptance. He asked thoughtful questions about Juliet's journey, careful to respect boundaries, but clearly trying to understand.
So, none of your clients know about the transition? He asked, as they moved to the living room for coffee and dessert.
A few of my long-term clients do, Juliet explained. But most of my new business has come after I became Juliet full-time, so there's been no need to explain. My work speaks for itself.
That's impressive, Daniel said sincerely. Not everyone handles such a significant life change with that kind of grace.
Oh, there was very little grace involved in the beginning, Juliet laughed, shooting Melissa a knowing look. You should have seen me trying to walk in heels for the first time. It was like watching a newborn giraffe on an ice rink. The makeup attempts were even worse, Melissa added, grinning. I came over one morning to find her with eyeliner halfway up her forehead. In my defense, I sneezed during application, Juliet protested. Daniel watched their easy banter with a smile. You two have an amazing relationship. Most siblings I know would have turned this situation into a lifetime of awkwardness. Oh, there's still plenty of awkwardness, Melissa assured him. But underneath it all, we're just grateful. I got to keep my sibling and gain a best friend, all because the Falcons can't maintain a lead. And I got to discover who I really am, Juliet added softly.
Even if it took a ridiculous bet to get there.
Later that night, as Juliet prepared to leave, Daniel pulled her aside while Melissa was clearing the dessert plates.
I just wanted to say,
he began, slightly hesitant,
that I think what you've done is incredibly brave. Living authentically isn't easy for anyone, but you seem to have embraced it completely.
Juliet smiled, touched by his sincerity. Thank you.
It wasn't a straight path, and there are still challenging days, but I can't imagine going back. Why would you? Juliet is wonderful, Daniel said with genuine warmth. And between us, Melissa has shown me pictures of Calvin. The cargo shorts were indeed an abomination. Juliet laughed, relaxing into the moment. I still miss the pockets, if I'm being honest. A small price to pay for self-discovery, Daniel replied with a grin. When Melissa rejoined them, she found her sister and boyfriend engaged in an animated discussion about the merits of different pocket designs in women's clothing. The scene was so normal, so comfortable, that it brought an unexpected lump to her throat. Everything okay over here? She asked, slipping her arm through Daniel's. Just debating the tragic lack of functional pockets in women's fashion, Julia explained. Daniel agrees it's a conspiracy to sell more handbags. Obviously, Melissa rolled her eyes. That's Fashion Industry 101, day one stuff. As they said their goodbyes at the door, Melissa hugged her sister tightly. That went well, she whispered. He likes you. He's great, Mel, Juliet whispered back. Don't mess this one up. I'll try not to, Melissa promised, then added more seriously. I'm proud of you, you know, not just for tonight, but for everything. Juliet smiled, the expression reaching her eyes in a way that Calvin's smiles never had.
I know. Me too.
1 year to the day after the bet was made, Juliet hosted a small gathering at her newly purchased condo. The space reflected her evolved aesthetic, clean lines and minimalist furniture accented with touches of warmth. A yellow throw pillow here, a framed landscape there. Her graphic design business had flourished, allowing her to finally leave the apartment that had witnessed her transformation and settle into a home that truly felt like her own. Melissa and Daniel arrived first, now 6 months into their relationship and clearly happy. They brought champagne and a gift wrapped in floral paper. What's this for? Julia asked, accepting the package. Your anniversary, Melissa explained. 1 year since Juliet came into our lives. Inside the box was a framed photo of Calvin and Melissa from years ago, alongside a recent picture of Juliet and Melissa at a beach resort. The contrast was striking, not just in appearance, but in the confidence and joy evident in Juliet's expression compared to Calvin's uncomfortable smile.
We thought you might want to remember the journey,
Daniel explained, now fully integrated into their small family unit.
Not many people get to experience life from such different perspectives.
Juliet traced the edge of the frame, emotions welling up. This is perfect. Thank you both. The doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of other guests, colleagues who had become friends, neighbors who had watched her evolution with quiet support, and a few newer acquaintances who had only ever known Juliet. As the evening progressed, Juliet found herself in conversation with a man she had recently met through a professional networking event. James was intelligent, funny, and completely unaware of her history, seeing only the confident woman in the yellow blouse who spoke passionately about design principles and client relationships.
I have to admit,
he said as they stood by the large windows overlooking the city.
When I first met you at that conference, I was intimidated. You have this assurance about you that's rare.
Juliet smiled, knowing exactly where that assurance had come from.
It wasn't always that way. I had to learn to be comfortable in my own skin. Haven't we all?
James replied, raising his glass slightly.
Though some have a harder journey than others.
Across the room, Melissa caught her sister's eye, raising an eyebrow and tilting her head subtly toward James. Juliet gave a small, almost imperceptible nod in response, acknowledging the moment of connection. Later, as the party wound down and the last guests prepared to leave, James lingered, helping Juliet collect empty glasses and plates.
I enjoyed talking with you tonight,
he said, his interest clear but respectful.
I'd like to continue our conversation sometime. Perhaps over dinner?
Juliet paused, considering the invitation. Dating as her authentic self was territory she had yet to fully explore. There would be conversations to have, truths to share, vulnerabilities to navigate. But looking at James's open expression, she felt a flutter of possibility. "I'd like that," she replied, her voice steady and sure. "There's a lot more to talk about." After the last guest had departed and Melissa and Daniel had left with warm hugs and promises to call soon, Juliet stood alone in her new home. She moved to the bathroom, studying her reflection in the mirror. The auburn hair, now entirely her own, framed a face that had softened with hormone therapy. The yellow blouse complemented her complexion just as Melissa had predicted it would all those months ago. But it was the eyes that showed the most profound change. Where Calvin's gaze had been guarded and uncertain, Juliet's was clear and direct, the eyes of someone who had found her place in the world. She thought back to that rainy day when the bet was made, to the reluctant man who had stood in an apartment across town, resentful and embarrassed about the month ahead. That version of herself seemed like a character in a half-remembered story now, distant and unfamiliar. "Happy anniversary," she whispered to her reflection, a smile spreading across her lips. The Falcons had lost their game, but in doing so, they had given her the chance to win something far more valuable, herself.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!